So it's been a while since the last news video for Marvel's Avengers, but we've actually got a fair amount of information that's going round at the moment, and I've collated it all and we'll run over it all in this video. Now, the first one and probably the biggest one that really prompted me to do the video was the fact, through what looks to be maybe a fault in the game, if it is actually genuine and not fake, then we may have had a reveal of an upcoming character. We'll also break down the recent developer stream. There was a lot of good information in it, and then on top of that we'll talk about the EMA that was on Reddit with the lead combat designer Vince Napoli. A lot of people seem to have missed this, but there was a ton of really interesting information within it. But let's start off and let's jump in with the upcoming character reveal first. So this here was posted by the Play Avengers Twitter account. It was forwarded on to them now. It's either an absolutely huge scoop and reveal or it's fake, and it's really hard to say either way what it actually is. So it's a character profile screen. You can see the character in question certainly looks like what we've seen of Captain Marvel so far, so we're presuming if it is genuine it would then be Captain Marvel. The style of the portrait of course is very different from Miss Marvel on the right hand side, but they very well could be updating it. Maybe this is a still they'll use by the time that Captain Marvel actually comes out in the game, and just through some kind of bug this has appeared. So what do you think? Is this genuine? Is it fake? It is pretty hard to say, but let me know what you think in the comments below. We then move on to a breakdown of the last developer streams. This was from Miller on Twitter, and then it was actually transcribed once again by BillyB311 on Reddit, and there's lots of interesting information in here. Now, starting off at the top there, so it says there's lots of miscellaneous fixes in the work. Cloning lab is still being worked on, but something else is coming sooner. And later on, actually, when we're talking about this particular screenshot here, I think we know what the coming sooner may potentially be. Next up is saying Phil talks about the challenges they faced during development, with civilians being present in missions, and says it was sacrificed for performance issues, but it seems to be something they're actively pursuing. So that's something, of course, as more people start to switch over to the next gen version, they could look to introduce that for that particular version. Next up, Phil, on the subject of the cloning lab, says the big issue really was networking bugs and needing programmers who were working on Kate. So I reckon they did rush to get her out, so hopefully those developers can now go over and get the cloning lab out ASAP, because it's been a long time coming really. Next up again, it's saying Phil says that Kate had different weapons at one point in development, and quite rightly it says here, I presume it's the batons, because she does actually have batons as part of her outfit as well. We've got some information about an interview that Andy actually had with the voice actor for Kate, who also done Tiny Tina. That might be played in one of the next development streams. Phil saying that earlier in development Iron Man could summon a drone, and the developers have actually talked about, and when we get to the AMA on Reddit with the lead combat designer, we're actually going to talk about a bit more about how characters could potentially have more skills in future. So maybe in future you could have Iron Man having the ability to call in a drone or call in house party protocol, where he has a ton of suits come in and help him. That would be absolutely amazing. Now, the next line here is saying that Phil says the next gen release date should be confirmed soon, so that's pretty great. I can't wait for that. It runs pretty amazing on PS5 as it is. Cap and Hulk Traversal update is being worked on. Power level cap increase will come alongside a content drop. I imagine that will be the Wakandan content drop. That's going to be an absolute huge one. And then Phil says that a change to the system regarding no duplicate heroes in a party is being looked at. This is a really interesting one, because it's one I feel they definitely need in a way, because when Kate comes out, everyone's playing Kate and it's impossible to find a multiplayer game. But the way a lot of the hero moves are actually set up at the moment, they would be almost flat out broken if you could run multiple characters and have multiple instances of that move. Just think, for example, you have Thor with his 15 seconds invincibility. If you rotate that through different characters, if you timed it well enough, if you were able to actually manage your heroic energy, you could get exceptionally high uptime on it. So I'm curious what they'll do. I can see where the issue lies, but I think it could create a lot of issues as well trying to solve it. Now, next up is a line about vehicles, something I'm kind of glad we don't have. It was once a thing with enemies being in vehicles. It could still happen. It specifically points out the aim trucks littered around certain maps. We then talk about the emote wheel. Phil's seen some internal chatter on this, and he'll double check on the progress. Hope that comes soon, because at the moment having just one emote is not enough. Emotes are situational and you use them in different situations, and we're not able to do that. Now, this line here ties in with something I talked about a second ago. So Phil says that New Game Plus is very high priority, so I'm thinking potentially could that be another thing that's actually coming soon, because they say it's such high priority. And Andy says they're working on finalising a date. The fact they're finalising a date would say that it's maybe not going to be too far off. The next line here, Phil says that new content before the end of the year is unlikely. Team goes on holiday break at the end of the week. It does not preclude the possibility of another patch of fixes, and I'm really hoping we do get a patch to fix the fact that Kate doesn't have gear dropping in the Mega Hive at the moment, which is a right pity. I'm hoping we're not going to have to wait till after Christmas for that to be resolved. That would be massively disappointing. Andy's saying the next stream will be their last stream of the year, and then finishing up, Phil says that loadouts are coming in scheduled, so that's really pretty awesome. I'd love to be able to change between ranged and mailing characters nice and easy, but they don't have an exact timing for it. So there's actually a fair amount of information. Now let's jump into some questions that came from the lead combat designer. Now, and this is the same guy that made the God of War game, or done the combat for that. So there is actually a ton of information within the EMA, and Vince went really in depth with his answers as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to read it out word for word, but when we go through some of the more interesting answers he provided, I'll give a quick summary of it. And you can always pause it on screen if you want to read the full answer, or I'll even put a link to the full EMA on Reddit as well. But this first one's asking about potential plans to add new moves to characters. So the interesting part is just towards the end of it. He's saying, in addition to adding new characters with new skills and abilities, expanding the existing lineup with new abilities, skills, perks has been and still is part of our update plan. So that's absolutely awesome. I do feel that characters need a lot more variety when it does come to their heroics. I would like to see characters have a multitude of support and assault heroics, and you could pick and choose which ones you want to use. This next question is about boss mechanics. It's a relatively short answer and a really interesting one, so I'll read out the full thing. So he was asked about will we be getting more interesting mechanics. So he's saying definitely. One of the areas I'd personally hope to get further before shipping was the idea of really intricate and complex challenges that involve using the full arsenal of the hero's abilities and really leaning into some of the specific nuanced roles that we tried to build. So obviously role wise, you have like characters that are very good at crowd control, you have characters that are great at tanking, for example Captain America is absolutely amazing, and then you have your damage characters as well. So it looks like potentially when we get the likes of the cloning lab, you're going to have to build your different roles. In fact, one character I forgot how could I do that would be Miss Marvel with her heal. She's a support class, so maybe when the clonal lab comes out, you'll need a tank, you'll need a healer, and you'll need your DPS as well. I actually like the idea of that. I know not everyone will, but I actually like that. Now he's stating as well the upcoming Super Adaptoid, a mega level threat, is just a jumping off point for the combat team, being able to create much more dynamic encounters like what I'm talking about. So the actual Super Adaptoid fight within the Kate storyline is really pretty simple. Fingers crossed we get something really pretty interesting when they eventually bring out the mega level threat version of it. So the next question we have here is in regards to priorities and improving and expanding upon the combat system. Seems like a standard enough question, but there's one part of this I found really interesting. That's the reason I'm highlighting it. So I'll start roughly from the beginning. Vince says, I guess from my perspective, expanding the game in a way that adds more for every character on top of also providing new heroes is one of the major goals, but that's really in addition to streamlining and refining everything that we can along the way, especially when it comes to the upcoming next generation release. That was a bit that was really interesting there for me. It looks like they're really trying to pull everything together, and a lot of people suspected that the smart thing to do, and hopefully what they're looking to do, is maybe release the game on next gen consoles and release it when potentially the Wakanda expansion comes out. So you'll have, at that point, you'll have up to 9 different characters. A lot of the combat systems will be refined. You'll have your end game content like your cloning lab. Fingers crossed that's what they do, because I think that's actually an awesome idea. Let me know what you think they should actually do in regards to the next gen release as well in the comments below. We then have a question here about stats, and I do believe the tooltips in the game need a ton of work. They're not really that great at all. So Vince says, overhauling the attributes and stats skill descriptions in a manner that would expose some of this information is something I personally hope is going to make the initial list, but was pushed back for a post-release update. So the short answer is, he hopes that this will actually happen. It's something it really does, because if you're a min-maxer, it's an absolute nightmare to figure some of the things out in game, because they're just simply not explained at all. And again, fingers crossed this is something that for the next gen release they will have sorted. We have a really long answer here in regards to a really short question. It's about the impact system, how it works and comes into play in combat. So I'm not going to read out this whole thing here because there's a whole lot in it, but it goes really in depth. So if you're a bit of a geek and you like to know how these kind of things work and you're looking to get some more information, how your characters work in game as well, then definitely give this particular answer a read. The next two questions we have are all about tuning on Widow, so I'll quickly go through them, but they're talking about bringing in the ability when you're using the grenades on Widow, you need to hold down a certain button, but when you fill out your overcharge, if you then hold down that button, you go invisible rather than throwing out the grenade, which you might not necessarily want to do. So Vince was saying they're looking into systems to allow you to actually change that. The next one was in regards to building your overcharge once again on Widow, but it was to do with how easy it is to actually lose it, and it's something they're looking to balance. I really hope they look into checking out Thor and Hulk as well, because the overcharge ability is just next to impossible. They're two big characters, by and large they're normally melee characters, and one hit and you actually lose their overcharge status, so fingers crossed they will look at them as well. We finish up here with a really interesting breakdown of the differences between Kate and also Clint, because you see so many people saying, oh, they're just archers, they're going to be very similar, but we've seen the way Kate's kit is, I'm pretty certain she's going to be very different from Clint. And when you actually read this as well, Vince does break down how little they will actually have in common, so there'll be a lot of differences between the two characters, even though they are both archers. So I'm not going to read out the full thing because there's a whole ton there. Once again, I'll put a link to the AMA on Reddit if you want to read it yourself, or you can just pause the screen here to actually have a quick read of it. I hope this has been helpful anyway. I've struggled a little bit during this video because I think I might be getting a chest infection, so apologies if that came through in the video at all, but I hope the video once again has been helpful. Thanks for tuning in, stay safe, and I'll see you all again soon.